The hospital waiting room was silent except for the low hum of fluorescent lights and the distant beeping of machines. Ethan sat on a hard plastic chair, hunched forward, his elbows on his knees and his head in his hands. He had been there for hours, his heart thundering with every second that passed. His mother was in surgery. The woman who had raised him alone, who had sacrificed everything to give him a good life, now lay behind those double doors. And he couldn't help her. He couldn't even afford the hospital bills. Just 2 weeks earlier, Ethan had been let go from his job at a small tech company. Downsizing, they called it, nothing personal. His boss had said, sliding a thin envelope across the table. But to Ethan, it felt deeply personal. Rent was due, his savings were gone, and now his mother, his only family, was fighting for her life. He whispered under his breath, his voice cracking, "Why me? Why now? Haven't we suffered enough?" Tears threatened to spill from his weary eyes, but he clenched his fists tighter, trying to hold them back. To him, it felt like the universe had singled him out, piling hardship upon hardship until he was crushed under the weight of it all. Across the room, an elderly janitor pushed a mop bucket slowly across the floor. His steps were steady, his movements unhurried, as if the world wasn't rushing him at all. The man's name tag read Mr. Harris, though Ethan didn't bother to look up long enough to notice at first. But the old man noticed Ethan. He noticed the way his hands trembled, the way his shoulders shook when he thought no one was watching. After a few minutes, the janitor parked his mop beside the wall and sat down in the chair across from Ethan. For a moment, they sat in silence. Then the old man spoke, his voice gentle but firm. "You look like a man caught in a storm," he said. Ethan barely glanced at him. He wasn't in the mood for small talk. "You wouldn't understand," he muttered. The janitor tilted his head. "Maybe, but I've weathered more storms than you think, and I'll tell you something. Storms aren't always sent to drown us. Sometimes they're here to teach us how to swim." Ethan frowned. The words irritated him at first. Easy for some old janitor to say. What did he know about real problems? But then he looked up and saw the man's eyes, calm, steady, full of something Ethan hadn't felt in weeks. Peace. Against his own resistance, Ethan asked, "And what if the storm never ends?" The old man smiled softly. "That's when you learn you're stronger than you ever believed." Mr. Harris leaned back in his chair, his mop forgotten for the moment. "You see, years ago I lost everything I thought I couldn't live without," he began. Ethan looked at him, curious despite himself. "I had a wife," the old man continued, his eyes softening. "The love of my life. We had a little house. Nothing big, but it was ours. Then one night, a fire started in the kitchen. By the time the firefighters got there, the whole place was gone. My wife. She didn't make it out." The words hung heavy in the air. Ethan's breath caught. "I could have given up right then," Mr. Harris said quietly, "and trust me, I wanted to. I spent months asking the same question you just whispered to yourself. Why me? But one day I realized something. I was still here, and if I was still here, maybe I still had a purpose." He leaned forward, his voice stronger now. "So I started showing up at this hospital. At first just to clean floors, but soon I found something greater. Every person I meet here is fighting their own battles. Sometimes all they need is someone to remind them they're not alone. That's my purpose now, and you know what? It gives me peace." Ethan's throat tightened. He had been drowning in his pain, only looking at what he had lost, never at what remained. Mr. Harris added, "Son, you can choose to focus on what's missing, or you can focus on what's left. Gratitude is the rope that pulls you out of the darkest well." The words echoed inside Ethan's chest, striking something deep. Hours passed. Ethan paced the waiting room, Mr. Harris's words replaying in his mind. Finally, the double doors opened and a doctor approached. "Are you Ethan Carter?" "Yes," Ethan answered, his voice shaky. The doctor smiled. "Your mother made it through surgery. She's going to need rest and care, but she's going to recover." Relief washed over Ethan like a flood. His knees nearly buckled, and tears streamed down his face. For the first time in weeks, he whispered a prayer of gratitude. He turned to share the news with Mr. Harris, but the old man was gone. His mop and bucket were neatly placed in the corner, but the chair was empty. Confused, Ethan sat back down. That's when he noticed something on the seat beside him, a small folded note. With trembling hands, he opened it. In neat handwriting, it read, "When life tests you, remember this. Positivity is not ignoring pain, it's choosing to believe that better days are ahead." Ethan held the note to his chest, tears spilling freely now. Whoever this janitor was, he had given him more than comfort, he had given him hope. A week later, Ethan sat by his mother's bedside, feeding her soup and telling her about the mysterious janitor who had changed his outlook. She smiled weakly, squeezing his hand. "You see," she whispered, "there are angels everywhere. Sometimes they just wear uniforms we don't expect." Ethan smiled, his heart lighter than it had been in months. In the weeks that followed, he began volunteering at the hospital. He greeted patients, comforted families in waiting rooms, and sometimes just sat with strangers who looked as broken as he once felt. Each time he carried Mr. Harris's words with him, passing them along like a torch in the darkness. He never saw the old man again, but he felt his presence in every act of kindness, in every moment of hope shared. One evening, as Ethan helped a young boy whose father was in surgery, the child asked, "Why are you helping me? You don't even know me." Ethan smiled softly and replied, "Because once, when I felt like giving up, a stranger helped me, and he taught me that being positive doesn't mean pretending everything's okay. It means believing that no matter how dark it seems, the sun will rise again." The boy nodded, his little eyes glistening, and in that moment Ethan realized something powerful. He had become the very light that once saved him. Life is unpredictable, sometimes it feels unfair, but when storms come we always have a choice. We can drown in despair, or we can search for the lesson, the strength, and the light hidden within the darkness. Ethan's story is proof that even in the hardest times, positivity is possible, not by denying the pain, but by believing in tomorrow. And sometimes, all it takes is a stranger's words to remind us of the hope we've forgotten. Be positive in difficult situations. Ethan would later tell others, because storms don't last forever, but the strength they give you, that lasts a lifetime.